Hello, my friends. It's Julie, and I am starting another round of 5 days, 5 VRs. So, the last time I did this, I just checked, and it was back in 2023. So, it's been a hot minute, and I thought, why not bring this back? I have a list of VRs that I've been wanting to do from recent tags and videos. So, to prevent that list from getting even longer, let's go ahead and knock out 5 VRs in 5 days. For day one, we are starting with hashtag only one deck from Jay over at Iridescent Tarot. Jay tagged me for this one, and I was simultaneously very appreciative and horrified because this tag does not F around. So the premise of this is that if you could choose just one tarot and one oracle, which would they be? No honorable mentions, one of each. So very cutthroat, and I thought to myself, how am I going to do this? And I decided, if I couldn't decide, and I was agonizing over it for too long, then I wasn't going to force it. But surprisingly, it took me like minutes to make my decision. Per usual, the disclaimer that I make for any VR still stands, and that is that these are my choices as of the time that I'm filming this video. If you ask me in 2 days, hell, 2 hours from now, I could have different selections. But, having said that, I came up with these choices like a few weeks ago when Jay first put out her video, and they haven't changed for what it's worth. Also, I haven't included any of the decks that I created because if I did, then this video just wouldn't happen because that definitely would be a very challenging and very agonizing decision, one that I just probably wouldn't be able to make. Let's start off with the runner up for tarot, and that is the Everyday Witch. And perhaps some of you are surprised that this wasn't in fact selected as the only tarot deck for me. This deck, we have a long history. This is a kindred deck, a mainstay deck in my collection. I have said that so many times before. I don't see that changing in the near future. This is a deck that really upended my expectations. This was one of the first examples where my initial impressions were not very favorable, and this deck proved me wrong. So she's like a bestie. We might have long periods apart, but when we come back together, it's as if no time has passed. And I appreciate her sass. I appreciate that I'm called out on a bad behavior. And so, yeah, a beloved deck for sure. The reason that this did not make the cut in the end is that, one, this art style is just not a preferred aesthetic for me. That's just a personal thing. It is actually one of the factors that initially had put me off to the deck. And now, of course, I enjoy the art, I enjoy the imagery, but in comparison to the deck that I ultimately chose, I prefer that aesthetic of that deck more. Another reason is that there are a few cards that I just don't care for. So, for instance, the King of Pentacles with his whole damn cake in this silly pose. Look, I'm not going to bludgeon this point because we have talked about this card in our Three Girls, One Deck lives. So if you know, you know, okay? So that's one card. And then we have the Maiden, Mother, and Crone theme here in the Sun that has never resonated with me. We see that the mother figure is pregnant. Obviously, I understand the reason for this choice, and there are other ways to mother. And so I feel that this image for the Sun card is limiting, for me anyway. And then finally, the Devil card. I mean, do I even need to say anything at all? So if I could keep only one tarot deck, this is my choice, and that is Tarot of the Cat People. So given that you know that Everyday Witch is out, then this might not come as a surprise to a few of you. This deck, it just ticks so many boxes. So first of all, it was a gift from my sister. She got me both the deck and the out-of-print guidebook, The Traveler's Report. And so, I mean, they're going to come in a pair, both the deck and the guidebook. And, you know, the guidebook, I mean, it's a dry read. I mean, it ain't no Sasha Graham or Barbara Moore, but it's indicative of what the guidebook is meant to represent, in which that it is a report. And so it does have that dry tone, and it is dated. It is many years old. And so, you know, I acknowledge that for what it is, and, you know, I take what's useful and I leave the rest. And for me personally, there's a lot of great details in this guidebook to add layer to the meaning in these images, the different costumes and what they mean, you know, the jewels that they wear, the headpieces, the different types of cats, the various stations that these people hold in the community. So there's a lot to keep building on here with this deck. So I feel like I would never get bored with it. I also really enjoy this art style. I love the colorway, and it's just, to me, very, I don't know, it's evocative, and it's just beautiful to look at. Another factor is nostalgia. So I've come to learn that nostalgia is a common factor for me in a lot of decks that I choose. And this has that. I've said in many videos that this gives, you know, book covers of sci-fi fantasy novels that I would read in my younger years. It also gives, you know, Star Trek Next Generation. That was my particular jam, TNG. You know, this would be one of the civilizations that the characters would visit. That's how I imagined this deck and these people. And I also love that this has strong crone energy. And as I approach my crone years, I really value that aspect in a deck even more. And because of that crone presence, it gives a real sense of wisdom to this deck. And of course, cats. All right, let's move on to Oracle. The runner-up is the Citadel Oracle. This is such a stunning deck. The imagery is always engaging. I love this shape. It's just a nice size to be able to shuffle. I love the world building here. Again, nostalgic of the types of books that I would read. You know, the fantasy sci-fi books. The guidebook is great, and the key terms and keywords are wonderful. And yeah, this is just a great time. I've had wonderful readings with this. The reason that this did not make the cut is that while I've had lovely readings using this deck, and it's been a really fantastic time, this deck has not had as profound an effect on me as my chosen deck for this tag. And it's not to say that this deck can't or won't do that in the future, but as it stands, with our history so far, there just hasn't been that deep of a connection. So if I could choose only one oracle, it would be the Wisdom of the Wild Things. I love this deck so much. The art, totally my cup of tea. I want to meet these creatures and characters. The guidebook slaps, as the young kids would say. It doesn't just provide cliche platitudes or affirmations. Angie Sullins really delivers each card meaning in a fresh way, without droning on and on, like some guidebook authors can do. I will not mention any names. And this deck has seen me through probably the most difficult and traumatic time in my life. It was really there for me, and it offered so much support, and it validated my experiences. And yeah, it was there at a very pivotal time. So this is definitely a mainstay in my collection. It occurred to me that I have not ever used these two as a pair, at least not to my recollection. So I just wanted to see how they would look together. I mean, certainly the art styles are very different, and yet I don't mind this at all. And I've definitely paired tarot and oracle together that have dissimilar styles. Before, I used to be more of a snot about it. I'm like, they have to match aesthetically. But I've since let that go because if I hadn't, then I would be missing out on some great pairings. And I think that if these two communities met up, they would be friends. So I like this actually. So yeah, I'm going to have to try this pretty soon here. I'm going to have to pair these together and work with them that way. All right. That makes up day one of 5 days, 5 VRs. Thanks again to Jay at Iridescent Tarot, and I will catch you all for day two.